It would be an understatement to say Final Fantasy VII Rebirth got a massive update yesterday, a new trailer and a ton of new information, and I'm here to catch you up to speed on everything we know right now on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We are almost at 93,000. Please push us over the edge. First and foremost, starting with the developer statement. Here's what Yoshinori Kitase has had to say, quote, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has been set for release on February 29th, 2024. This second installment of the Final Fantasy VII Remake project will feature elements from the previous game, as well as greatly enhanced features such as the vast world map to explore, and synergy abilities with party members. The story will unfold more dramatically than ever before, with a rapid pace of major twists and turns. We know fans are dying to see one scene in particular. Oh man, he knows that we're just dying to see it. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth can be enjoyed as its own standalone adventure, with the party leaving Midgard to explore the wide world beyond. For those wishing to deepen their understanding of the story, a recap of the previous game will also be provided. We hope that both fans and those who've never played Final Fantasy before will enjoy this game. Next we have the director, Naoki Hamaguchi, who has had this to say, We are finally able to announce the release date to all of you. We have been working tirelessly on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth since the release of Final Fantasy VII Remake, and we cannot wait for you to experience our labor of love. In this title, Cloud and his friends who have fled Midgar will be setting out on an adventure across an expansive world of untold adventure in pursuit of Sephiroth. While the main story is bigger and more ambitious than the previous game's narrative, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth also embraces the concept of free exploration, with compelling stories, fun mini-games, powerful monsters, and so much more to find throughout the world map. We hope you will explore this world in great detail, as nearly 100 hours of adventure awaits. We hope you will take this new Final Fantasy game experience in your own hands to enjoy. Now, obviously, the game's main story is not going to be 100 hours. However, it will take you 100 hours to do everything, all the side quests, mini games, and a ton of other things. While I suspect we'll have a 35 to 40 hour main story like we did with Remake, the amount of side content and things to do in this game in general is just going to be tremendously more, and I think that's awesome. And now to hear from the big man himself, Tetsuya Nomura. This is the second title of a trilogy and covers between the start of the journey outside of Midgar to the midpoint of the original Final Fantasy VII. If Final Fantasy VII Remake was an introduction to the world and a preparation for this journey, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth serves as an illustration of the incidents that started the journey, an exploration of the people tied to it, and the journey itself heading toward its climax. Many elements were carefully selected for this title, and because this is a series, we have a unique opportunity to review and incorporate feedback from the previous title, such as increasing the number of characters. I am sure that the bar for the next work will be raised even higher now that we have included so many spectacular elements in this work. But even so, the entire team continues to work diligently and without compromise on its development. There is also the looming question of what fate awaits. Whether you have experienced the original title or will embark on this adventure with fresh eyes, we hope you will face the ending of this work on your own terms. So if you've been following me on this channel, you already know the part of this I'm going to highlight. The part about them being able to reiterate and incorporate feedback from the previous title. I have an entire video on how Final Fantasy used to iterate on its previous systems, such as its ATB system, its world map system, and etc. And those were the things that allowed FF to experiment while also improving. I think that's also why Rebirth is going to be such a great experience, because it's one of the few Final Fantasy games in the past 20 years that's going to be able to do exactly that. Then we got some brand new information from the PlayStation blog, and there is some really juicy stuff in here. With them asking, quote, Can you explain what we're seeing of the combat system here? Has it remained untouched since Final Fantasy VII Remake, or have you altered anything for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? Hamaguchi. I want to highlight the new synergy moves from the battle system. This new mechanic allows players to use synergy commands and abilities freely at any time by using up a gauge charge in a similar manner to limit breaks. So through the battles, players will feel the relationships and bonds they have developed between the characters, even more so than the previous game. We've also added skill trees as a new element of character growth. You can unlock synergy abilities through the skill trees too. Many new materia with new abilities not seen in the first game are available as well, so players will have even more options to customize and build character loadouts to their own taste. All of this sounds awesome to me. I was a huge fan of Final Fantasy VII Remake's combat. I still think that combat is essentially what the future of Final Fantasy's battle systems should be, and to see them continuously improving on it makes me happy. Hamaguchi also talks about Red 13's gameplay, and now he has his own unique revenge gauge mechanic. The revenge gauge charges when he guards against enemies' attacks, and he can then spin that charge on various abilities once the gauge is filled. This allows him to have a flow of going from being defensive to offensive. Now this next quote from Nomura may upset some people, but I think it's pretty understandable, and it's something that I have foreseen for quite some time. Let me read it first and then I'll explain. We have seen Red 13 and Ketchi shown as playable characters, and the footage also shows another character who looks like Vincent. So he'll be playable as well? Will the party expand further too? The original party members are all present in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. In the previous title, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Red 13 became an accompanying party member in the second half of the game, but he will become an official, playable party member starting from Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Similarly, there are characters who are accompanying members in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth that will become official party members in the next title. So that means that Cid and Vincent are probably not going to be full party members in this game. They're going to be guest party members who are going to come into your party, participate in battles, but you're not going to be able to actively control them, get equipment for them, and all sorts of other things just yet. And honestly, this makes a lot of sense to me. From a game design perspective, having this many playable characters in a modern game is quite difficult to do. The other perspective is a marketing perspective. It helps you sell the third game by showing the new gameplay of the new party members. So whether you're looking at this in terms of development time and cost, or whether you're looking at it from the perspective of marketing, you need to hold a little bit back for the next game, at least whenever you're doing a trilogy like this. In the trailer, we caught a glimpse of Alexander and Odin, and there'll be plenty of returning summons in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. On top of this, Hamaguchi has alluded to the fact that there will be a brand new summon not even featured in the original FF7. So this is all incredibly exciting. Then there is the return of sneaking into Junon. I was really surprised to see this in the trailer. Here's what they've said in the interview. Sneaking into the original Junon saw players partake in another unique minigame. We saw the parade and many other minigames in the newly revealed trailer. So will the same minigame from the original Final Fantasy VII still be playable? Hamaguchi. Yes, the same minigame will be playable, but we've greatly increased its scope compared to what was in the original Final Fantasy VII. In the original, Cloud sneaks into one of the units participating in the parade and joins in the performance. But in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, he becomes the leader of that unit and can customize the composition of the soldiers participating in the parade. The chosen unit composition will alter the performance, and it goes without saying, this affects how the minigame is played. The parade to celebrate the inauguration of Rufus as the new president of Shinra is the climax of the first half of the original game, so the development team was really enthusiastic about making all the details for it. It's one of the moments I hope players enjoy the most. It is really cool to see the dedication to minigames in this game, particularly since there's been a complaint that there hasn't been that many minigames in modern Final Fantasy titles. This really came to a head with Final Fantasy 13 and 16, so it's good to see that minigames are making their way back. Hamaguchi's also assured us that they've gone all out and created a huge number of minigames on scale that surpasses even the original. These also have lots of unique games and challenges that appear as part of side stories that you can find as you explore the map, and he suspects that some players will be so caught up in fun minigames that they won't even be able to make progress in the main story. The Gold Saucer is a location that players are free to come back to anytime. Hamaguchi said in order to create a motivation for those players to come back, they've designed the part with a ton of changing content. New minigames are added as you come back. Harder difficulty modes are unlocked as the story progresses, so there is always a reason to go back to the Gold Saucer and do more. And the parts of the Gold Saucer seen in the main story have also been fully remade and upgraded too. So again, they realize just how important the Gold Saucer is, and they have gone absolutely ham on this thing, and it's wonderful to see. I don't think that any other Final Fantasy has ever managed to capture the magic of FF7's Gold Saucer. Well, maybe other than Final Fantasy XIV's Gold Saucer, a reference of Sevens. I feel like in itself, the Gold Saucer should become a routine Final Fantasy convention. Now, let's talk about the thing that left such an impression on everyone during the trailer: the Chocobos. Here's what they've had to say. Now you're several years into remaking iconic locations of Final Fantasy VII, and with Final Fantasy VII Remake being so successful, do you feel less pressure to match fan expectations when reimagining beloved areas and moments? Hamaguchi: as Final Fantasy VII Rebirth will take players to various locations across the whole world, we need to recreate the massive Final Fantasy VII world map that would also incorporate places such as towns and dungeons within itself. To do this, we dug deeply into the feeling of each different region and reflected that in the graphics, creating areas that look and feel quite diverse. On top of that, we designed chocobos unique to each region that have their own abilities. That is, chocobos that can climb sheer cliffs, and sky chocobos that can fly, etc. So players will need to utilize their chocobos to fully explore each area. I hope players have a lot of fun with this aspect of the exploration. And this is so cool to me, and one of the coolest features I've seen in a Final Fantasy in quite some time. The fact that you're going to have all of these different types of chocobos and they're going to be used for different types of movement, I think that is a really cool feature. Hamaguchi was then asked about the function of the world map in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. He said, "The world map is vast and expansive, so not all of the locations on it will be used in the main story alone. In fact, volume-wise, the amount of side content in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is nearly double that of the main quest. Players who want to enjoy Final Fantasy setting on an even deeper level can explore all corners of the world, discovering many different and exciting experiences such as new stories, battles, and minigames to play. It will also be possible to return to any of the regions in the world even after the main quest moves on from that area, so you don't have to worry about leaving things behind or unfinished," which is so nice, because the first game definitely did not do that. You were locked into a single location, and that was wherever the chapter had dictated. It wasn't until chapter 14 where you got a little bit of mobility, and then it was straight back to the corridors. In Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, you will be able to go around the world of Gaia anywhere you want at any time, and the game is not going to pressure you to do all the side quests in the chapter all at once, which is already a huge improvement. And if you're wondering about if save files and character builds will transfer over into Final Fantasy VII Rebirth from Remake, Hamaguchi said that because this is a trilogy project, each game is standalone, and that because of this, each game's balancing is done independently. And so while levels and abilities will not carry over from one game to the next, they are creating some special bonuses from fans who played the previous game and allow them to start with a little something extra. This is nice, as it'll at least give you some sort of feel that what you're doing before will carry over into the next thing. Finally, and I think this one is most important, where does Final Fantasy VII Rebirth lead up to? Nomura has had this to say: "We have mentioned this a few times before, but the the order in which you can explore locations is not the same as the original Final Fantasy VII, and there are shifts in the order. For example, Wutai, one of the major locations, is not part of the route in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and will be visited in the next one. Although there are some changes in the order of locations, the locations depicted in this title extend up to the Forgotten Capital, where the greatest fate of Final Fantasy VII awaits you. I think we all know what that means. And it's been one of the biggest questions of the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy: will Aerith still die? This is a fantastic cliffhanger to leave the second game off on, and it allows us to go into the third game with stakes. I assume that her death will still happen, but honestly, there's no telling for sure. And with all the new plot twists surrounding Zack and everything that's going on with the Arbiters, Destiny not necessarily confined to its original restrictions, who's to say that that will still happen, or if it'll happen in the same way, or if something else will happen? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Shout out to patron Devin and the rest of the Ultima community.